This is the second part of my tutorial based on the Mies van der Rohe house, where I make a 1-point perspective line drawing with a collaged background. We left off here with a make 2D of a 1-point perspective, and I've brought that into Illustrator, and I've changed the line weights, and I've added in some material in the background, which is photorealistic but not photorealistic. And we'll look at some techniques using masks and found object photography to make a collaged background. So in my Photoshop file, I've got a picture of shredded wheat from my house or wherever, or the internet, and then I've got a forest silhouette. So I'm going to show you a couple of ways to work with masks in Photoshop to get some collage material. And you can think of this exactly like you would be cutting out paper from magazine or whatever and pasting it on. So the idea here is to work with a mask, which allows you to modify a layer whilst saving its original state. So I'm going to use the forest silhouette, the black portion, which is just a clip art I got from the World Wide Web. And I'm going to mask out the shape of those trees over top of the shredded wheat. And the way I do it is I get into the layer that is the shape of the mask. I'm going to use the magic wand selection tool to select all like colors. I'm going to click on black. There are some settings up here I can fiddle with if I want it contiguous or non-contiguous. And then that's the selection set that will form the mask. Once I've got that, I go into the shredded wheat layer, which is directly beneath this forest silhouette. And down here at the bottom of the layers palette is a little button called Add Layer Mask. And what this does is add something on, and I can see if I turn off the forest silhouette layer, I have now produced something that looks like I've cut the shredded wheat in the shape of the forest. But I still have my original shredded wheat here. I can work with it. If I want to, I can temporarily unlink those things, and that allows me, for example, to scale my shredded wheat or move it around or edit it in any way, and then by relinking, I can reapply the mask. There may also be times when I want to edit the mask and not the image that's being masked. And what I can do in that case is I can click on the mask over here in the layer and edit by erasing. So I'm basically saying which pixels will be included and which won't. I can use the eraser tool, and I can set up the brush settings here for what's going to be erased. And in the mask, the white in the mask icon over here, the white pixels are what's included and the black is not included. I can edit directly in this form, but it may be a little easier to do option click and just see the mask. So for example, if I make a lot more pixels white, like so, and then click, I am showing a lot more of my shredded wheat image. In fact, I'm showing more than I want to because now I have the white background of the shredded wheat here. So conversely, I can switch my default colors, black and white, can switch them so that white is the primary color and black is the secondary. And now when I do erase, I'm doing the opposite. I'm removing from the selection set. And if I want to make this look more tree-like, I could even use, for example, a lasso to eliminate those pixels. And now I can kind of see what I'm doing, and I can edit directly on the mask. so long as I have the mask selected in the layer menu. Once I'm happy with this, I'm going to start to put it into Illustrator while I'm still working on it in Photoshop. So I'm going to do a save as. This is going to be called collage background, and I'm saving it as a Photoshop format, PSD. Now I'll place that file into my vector line work file in Illustrator. And that will just come in at whatever size it's in. What I'm doing now is checking the setup. So I'm sizing this to the size of my view. And I'm going to keep working with the color and the shape. So the next way of working with masks is in Illustrator, where we'll use vector information to make a clipping mask. So in this case, we're going to use 3 rectangles that represent windows to clip, and we'll keep what's inside of them and eliminate what's outside of those 3 rectangles. The principle is this: I have a shape and I have something behind it. So the shape is a vector and whatever's behind it is pixel based. I select the 2, I right click, and I make a clipping mask. Well, in this case, I want to include all 3 windows in the clipping mask. So I'll take 1, 2, 3 windows, right click, and make them a compound path. And this will allow me to clip with kind of 3 clippers at once. What I like to do when making clipping masks is just copy, Control C, and then Control F, paste in place, and make a set of the clipping vector or vectors on my layer to be clipped, and then leave my other line work intact. So I'm just going to actually turn off all my line work, and everything we see here will just be for clipping. So I then take the clipping mask, whatever is the vector, the cookie cutter you could think of it as. I always want to make sure it's the uppermost thing in the stack, so bring the front, and then using Shift to select that background image. Right click, make clipping mask. So I can see what it looks like, and now I can continue to edit it in Photoshop. So I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to now add in another kind of mask, which is down here, adjustment layer. And this concerns the tone and color of everything beneath it. So I'm first going to make a black and white adjustment layer, and this does exactly what it says. It makes everything black and white. We can also have a tint, so it's like a highly desaturated color, and we can adjust some things about the tint here. In addition to that, I'm going to add in a layer of brightness contrast. Because I'm working with line work in Illustrator, I'm interested in the texture of the shredded wheat, but obviously I'm not interested in it looking a lot like shredded wheat. So I want it to be pretty pale and pretty high contrast. Once I save this PSD file, and I go back to Illustrator, because it's linked, right? I placed it. Some files are modified. Would you like to up them down? Yes, and there's this background. And so I can continue to work with these layers, these adjustment layers. And then I want to show one other kind of way of making a clipping mask. So also in my image, I have some fried chicken, and you'll see that because the fried chicken is beneath the adjustment layers of brightness and black and white in the stack, it is also black and white. If I were to move it up here, it would become a color image again. So I'm going to use the fried chicken to make some boulders. And the way I will do this is using the lasso again. And I'm just going to make some boulder shapes here. on the fried chicken, 1, and holding shift, and I'm going to do kind of another lump of folders, and so forth. Once I've got all of these lassos done, I can, leaving them selected, make a layer mask that will clip using those lassos. So in the first instance, I used an existing image as a mask. In this case, I just used the lasso to cut out some shapes. At this point, it's always possible to go back to my original image just by deleting, right-click, delete layer mask. If I ever want to commit to the clipping that I've made here, I can right-click and apply layer mask, and that changes from an image of the total image of fried chicken that's been masked to just cut up pieces of fried chicken, if you will. Once I've edited my image, I again will save it here in Photoshop and go into Illustrator to update it and take a look at how it's coming along. And at this point, I can populate the interior of my section perspective with people and or this same collage technique.